This clown, Red Wemette, FBI informant, was one of the first witnesses at the family secrets trial. He testified that he started working with the FBI back in 1971, and he would secretly record mob guys all the way through 1989. He identified Joey Lombardo in court in front of the jury. Joey stood up, started smiling. He said he had to ask Joey's permission to open up a bookstore in North Avenue. When he was complaining about the street tax, he was told he could very easily have an accident. Now, early on in the family secrets trial, one of the witnesses was an FBI agent, Michael Mazeth. He gave the jury an insight, an overview, the history of the Chicago outfit, who the players were, how the crews worked together. And he also talked a lot about how he was the one that actually wired Frank Calabrese Jr. and got him to cooperate against his father. Now, this guy was a real comical witness at the family secrets trial. Bobby the Beak Segal, Chicago outfit associate, career criminal. He testified that through his lawyer, he took a lie detector's test to prove he had nothing to do with the Tony Accardo break-in. I really question some of these outfit guys' friends and associates. Some real lowlifes these guys hang out with. This was one of them. Now, a key witness for the government at the family secrets trial was Frank Calabrese. I seen him testify against his father, Frank Sr. He was so nervous the first day on the stand, but as time went on, he got more and more comfortable, never once looking over at his father. He testified how he got his father to talk about murders while they were locked up together in prison. He talked about the letter he wrote and the code that they spoke in. Now, the main witness at the family secrets trial was Nick Calabrese. He was one of the only made members to ever flip and cooperate against the Chicago outfit. He testified on the stand that he personally participated in 14 murders, and he had knowledge of a dozen other murders. His testimony crippled the Chicago outfit and helped lock away his brother for life. Now, against his lawyer's wishes, Frank Calabrese decided to testify in his own defense. Imagine seeing a real mob guy not only in court, but to take the stand and try to explain to the jury his side of the story, how his brother and son stole millions from him and conspired to lock him up in prison. During cross-examination, he would lose his temper, pound his fist on the table, and yell out loud. Another witness at the family secrets trial was a close friend of Frank Calabrese, was Mr. James Stoffe, owner and operator of Father and Sons. He testified that him and Frank were close friends. They would vacation together, and that when a couple guys came in extorting $300,000 from him, he went to his good friend Frank Calabrese for help, not knowing that Frankie the Breeze was behind the extortion. My favorite witness by far was seeing Joey the Clown testify in his own defense. He flat out denied killing Danny Siefert, said he felt sorry for his family, denied being the boss of the Grand Avenue crew, said George Bush and Dick Cheney have a bigger crew. He only admitted to operating the largest dice game in the city of Chicago. When they played tapes of him threatening a lawyer, he said, "Hey, I threaten to strangle my ex-wife all the time, but I never did." Now, a character witness for Joey Lombardo was Johnny Liara, lightweight boxing champion, Grand Avenue legend. I had a chance to meet this guy and drink with him at Richard's Bar. He basically testified that Joey was a very generous guy from the neighborhood that would help people pay their rent, put their lights on, pay their grocery bill, even buy sports equipment for all the kids in the neighborhood. Now, Joey had two other character witnesses at the family secrets trial. One was a neighborhood guy that testified that Joey was like the godfather of the Grand Avenue neighborhood, how he took care of all his family and friends and neighbors, make sure everybody had good jobs, makes everybody stayed off of drugs. Joey also had his mistress get up there and said what a hardworking, good all-around guy that he was. Another interesting witness at the family secret trial was Dominic Calarco, A gentleman I actually got to know. He used to run the club on Grand in May. He was an old friend of Joey Lombardo's. He testified that Joey Lombardo came to him one night while he was on the lam and asked him for help. Dominic pleaded with him to turn himself in. And then Dominic also took him to Pat Spilatro, where they eventually got caught. Now, Joe the Shark Lopez had this guy come in as a witness to testify that the night Ortiz and the Pollock got killed, that he heard a different amount of shots than what Nick Calabrese testified to. He testified for maybe 30 seconds. The prosecutor didn't even ask him anything on direct. When this guy was leaving in the courtroom, he stopped, bowed in front of Joey Lombardo, and walked away, startling Joey. Now, a strong witness for the government was Emma Siefert. She testified on the day her husband was killed that she believed that Joey Lombardo was one of the masked gunmen. She could tell by his eyes, his voice, and the way he moved. There's her two sons. They were in court every day. You definitely felt their presence, and obviously you felt sorry for their loss. She was a crucial witness for the government. Now, another shady, questionable witness by the government was career criminal Alva Rogers. He testified how he met Marshall Capone in prison, and that when he got out, he was told to go see Joey Lombardo on Grand Avenue to get a job. He testified that the very next day after Danny Siefert was killed, that they were all out golfing, and Joey said, "That son of a bitch isn't going to be around anymore," basically admitting that he killed Danny Siefert. Now, the prosecution called Victor Caccitore as a witness. He testified how he was extorted by Nick Calabrese, Angelo Petri, and the Chinatown crew. He said they cut off a dog's head, threw it on his car. They took some dead mice, tied nooses around their throats, and then they blew out his back window with a shotgun, scaring him half to death. He went to Angelo Petri for help, not realizing that Angelo Petri was behind the extortion. Now, towards the end of the trial, I was not in court when Michael Spilatro's wife and daughter testified. I missed court that day, but Michael Spilatro's wife testified that the day they went missing, he seemed very nervous. He gave her a lot of cash. He put all his jewelry in a plastic bag and said, "If I'm not home by 9 o'clock, something's wrong." And his daughter testified she recognized Jimmy Marcello's voice when he called. Now, one of the 125 witnesses called towards the end of the trial was Dr. Pat Spilatro. He testified how he was obsessed with his brother's murders, how he went to all the federal prisons and interviewed every outfit guy that he knew, asking him, "Who killed my brother and why?" He testified treating Joey Lombardo on his tooth and eventually telling the cops where Joey Lombardo was hiding. Now, another interesting witness that the prosecution called was so embarrassing to Jimmy Marcello. They called his mistress. She was his mistress for many years, a hot bartender he met at Michael's Magic Touch in Lyons, Illinois. She testified that Jimmy paid her $5,000 a month, told her if she ever got questioned to keep her mouth shut. He paid her rent, vacations, and paid for her sick kid. Here's Charlene Cagnoni, Mrs. Cagnoni's wife, widow. She was in court almost every day, glaring, staring at Nick and Frank Calabrese. The government called her as a witness to testify that the last time she seen her husband alive, she remembers him kissing him, telling him how much she loves him. And then at one point, she yelled out at Nick Calabrese and called him the devil. Now, early on, the government called Ronnie Jarret's son, Ronnie Jarret Jr., to testify. I missed his testimony. He testified on the day he found out his dad was killed. He also asked Nick Ferriola, "Who killed my father and why?" Nicky Ferriola told him that his father had beef with Johnny Apes, and when he was called to a meeting, he would not go, and that's the reason.